To buy a McDonald's franchise, you need over $1 million in net worth and hundreds of thousands in liquid cash. But to buy a Chick-fil-A store, you only need $10,000, $10,000. For a business that averages over $9 million in annual sales, that is more than double a standard McDonald's and triple a KFC, all while being completely closed every single Sunday. It sounds like the ultimate financial cheat code, an absolute goldmine available to anyone with a modest savings account, except for one massive, shocking detail. It is officially harder to get a Chick-fil-A franchise than it is to get accepted into Harvard University. Over 60,000 people apply every single year, but corporate approves less than 0.2% of them. So, why would a corporation make entry so ridiculously cheap, yet reject 99.8% of the people who want to hand them money? Because the $10,000 price tag is an illusion, you see. Chick-fil-A isn't looking for investors. They are looking for something much harder to find. And the contract you sign is unlike anything else in modern business. To understand why this model prints so much money, you first have to understand how traditional franchising works. If you want to open a standard fast food store, you take on almost all the risk. You buy or lease the real estate. You pay hundreds of thousands for kitchen equipment. And you take out massive bank loans to build the store from scratch. In exchange, corporate charges you a small monthly royalty fee, usually around 4 to 5% of your sales, and leaves you alone to run your business. You take the risk, you keep the profit, and when you retire, you can sell that location for millions of dollars in equity. Chick-fil-A looked at that model and completely flipped it on its head. When you sign a deal with Chick-fil-A, you don't buy land, you don't buy fryers, you don't even own the building. Chick-fil-A corporate pays for everything, spending anywhere from $2 to $3 million to select prime real estate, build a custom store, and outfit it with state-of-the-art kitchen tech. You pay just $10,000. It sounds like an incredible deal until you turn the page and read the financial split, because corporate takes on all the upfront capital risk. They take a financial cut that would make traditional business owners physically ill. First off, Chick-fil-A takes a massive 15% off the top of your total gross sales as an ongoing service fee. To put that in perspective, that is triple what McDonald's takes. But they aren't done yet. After every bill is paid, after food costs, labor, utilities, and insurance are accounted for, Chick-fil-A takes 50% of whatever net profit is left over. Think about that for a second. Half of all your net earnings, gone, straight back to corporate headquarters in Atlanta. So, if corporate is taking 15% of revenue off the top, plus half of all the bottom line profit, how on earth does a local operator end up wealthy? The answer lies in sheer, unprecedented volume. The average non-mall Chick-fil-A location pulls in roughly $9.3 million in revenue every year, in high-density areas. Top locations hit 14, 15, or even $18 million in annual sales, even after corporate takes 15% off the top and 50% of the remaining net profits. The volume is so massive that the average store operator takes home anywhere from $300,000 to over $600,000 in personal income every single year. That is a six-figure salary, built on a $10,000 entry investment, which brings us right back to the central mystery. If the profits are this high, and the entry cost is this low, why doesn't corporate just let wealthy investors buy 10 locations at a time and build massive fast food empires? The answer is the single most important rule in the Chick-fil-A contract, and it is the exact secret behind their insane drive-thru efficiency. Chick-fil-A strictly forbids multi-unit ownership for almost everyone. You cannot buy 5 locations. You cannot be a passive investor who sits on a beach while hiring a manager to run the store. In fact, if you tell corporate during the interview process that you want to be an absentee owner, your application is thrown in the trash instantly. Chick-fil-A demands that every single operator runs just one store, full-time, hands-on, working inside the kitchen and behind the counter for 50 to 60 hours a week. They don't want your money. They want your life. They want an elite operational partner who manages that store with the frantic obsession of a small business owner, but with the backing of a multi-billion-dollar corporate machine. And that hands-on obsession shows up where it matters most, at the drive-thru. Drive-thru sales account for up to 70% of a store's total revenue. At most fast food chains, drive-thrus are a slow, frustrating bottleneck, but Chick-fil-A engineered their lanes like a high-speed assembly line. They pioneered face-to-face ordering, sending workers out into the parking lot with specialized tablets to take orders and process payments long before cars even reach the window. They redesigned their kitchens with custom, rapid-cooking pressure fryers, and introduced dual-lane merging systems that can clear over 100 cars an hour. Every minute saved in that line translates directly into hundreds of thousands of dollars in extra sales. And that brings us to the biggest financial paradox in retail history: the Sunday closure. Every single Sunday, without exception, all 3,000 Chick-fil-A locations lock their doors. That means for 52 days a year, the entire business produces $0. On paper, that looks like financial suicide. You are willingly throwing away 14% of your operational calendar while still paying rent, property taxes, and fixed costs. Yet, Chick-fil-A generates more annual revenue in 6 days a week than its closest competitors generate in 7. How is that mathematically possible? It comes down to two powerful forces: consumer psychology and labor economics. First, closing on Sunday creates a psychological sense of artificial scarcity. When customers know they cannot get a product on Sunday, it triggers a subconscious habit loop. Sales on Friday and Saturday surge, as families rush to get their fix before the weekend shutdown. Second, and even more important, it gives Chick-fil-A an unbeatable advantage in hiring talent. In the fast food industry, employee turnover regularly exceeds 100% per year. It is a constant cycle of quitting, hiring, and retraining. But by offering a guaranteed, predictable day off every single weekend, Chick-fil-A attracts higher quality, more reliable staff. Lower turnover means faster service, fewer order mistakes, and higher profit margins. It seems like an absolute win-win: high earnings, hyper-efficient operations, and Sundays off. Which leads us to the ultimate question: what is the catch? Why do some long-term operators eventually describe this dream job as a golden cage? To understand the darker economic reality, you have to look at what happens when an operator decides they want to leave the system. If you own a traditional franchise like a McDonald's or a Subway, you spend 20 years building up the store, paying off your equipment loans, and growing your customer base. When you decide to retire, you can sell that location to another investor for $2, $3, or even $4 million. That enterprise value, that sale price, is your retirement nest egg. At Chick-fil-A, you cannot sell your store, you cannot list it on the market, you cannot even pass it down to your children, because corporate owns the land, corporate owns the building, and corporate owns the brand license. You hold zero equity in the business. The day you decide to step down, or the day corporate decides not to renew your 10-year contract, your relationship ends, and your business reverts straight back to headquarters for $0. You don't own a business. You own a very high-paying, high-stress job disguised as a franchise. Chick-fil-A's masterstroke was creating a system that completely removes capital risk for the operator, while capturing almost all the long-term wealth creation for corporate. Corporate gets prime commercial real estate, paid off and operated by hyper-dedicated managers, while taking 15% of gross sales and half of all profits. It is one of the most brilliant,